And welcome everyone to our Monday afternoon chat about the AP poll and the Power 36. I'm Andy Katz from NCAA.com and March Madness. Well, a lot of changes on both sides of the polls here. Louisville goes up to number one in mine. They were number one last week. I got a little bit crazy with Michigan, which I think was understandable because Michigan had better wins down in the battle for Atlantis. I fully defend that pick. They went to Louisville and lost. Louisville gets the nod. However, there's a change with 2-3 with me. So Kansas is 2 in AP poll. They were 2 with me last week. But I looked at what Ohio State did last week. And while Kansas easily beat Colorado, sidebar, Colorado barely dropped. They're at 24. I dropped them a little bit, down to 19. So maybe they should have dropped more on mine and AP. I don't know. Sidebar. Anyway, Ohio State won convincingly at North Carolina, then crushed Penn State at home. Those 2 wins, the way they're playing right now, I got them a notch ahead of Kansas. So that's why I moved them above Kansas for right now. Maryland escaped. So they stay in that 4 spot for me. They escaped. They shouldn't have beaten Illinois. Great comeback by Anthony Cowan. You can hear him on March Madness 365 tomorrow. He had the 3, the steal, the free throw. Gonzaga, steady at 6 after their win at Washington on Sunday, which was, certainly a huge win for them, the way they were playing on their front court. Just a great win for the Zags against their rival from Washington, especially when you think about that, Joel Ayayi, their guard from France, who's been in the program a couple of years. He's finally starting to develop into a big shot maker and hit a huge 3 for the Zags in that win over Washington. Right now, I got Auburn ahead of Duke. In large part because I think I saw Auburn in Brooklyn. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I know they had to struggle to beat Furman, but they beat them. They didn't lose that game. You could argue Duke lost to Stephen F. Austin at home. Duke looked very good against Michigan State. Michigan State contributed to that. So look, you can go either way with them, but I think Auburn's the best team in the SEC right now. I'm higher in Dayton right now. I put them in my top 10. The way they played against St. Mary's down in Phoenix was incredibly impressive. So that's why I went with the Flyers in that spot. Virginia and Purdue. It's interesting. Purdue doesn't even crack the top 25, yet they had 13 threes against Virginia. They made Virginia look pedestrian. So why not give them some credit and put them ahead of Virginia? Butler, I had them lower, moved them up to 17 after the win over Florida. I'm looking at some other differences here. I dropped Seton Hall. They lost the road game at Iowa State, very difficult road game. They got 3 losses right now. San Diego State, good to see them at 25 in the AP poll. I have them at 18. Right now, I think they're playing better than Utah State. North Carolina is interesting. North Carolina State at 17 in the AP poll. I dropped North Carolina down to 34 because they looked awful in their 2 games last week. So is there no penalty for that? There's got to be. Yes, this thing's going to fluctuate, but you got to have some penalty if you lose 2 games like that in the manner in which they did. Marquette, big road win at K-State. NC State looked good in their games last week. Wichita State, their only loss is to West Virginia on a neutral. I kept West Virginia in. Still no sign of them in the AP poll. Lost to the buzzer, essentially, to St. John's. So I'll give them some credit. Creighton, I think they deserve recognition. I put them at 29. Remember they beat Texas Tech and they beat Nebraska. I know Nebraska's struggling, but they're looking pretty impressive right now. Debut for Liberty. Undefeated, 11-0, 36 right now. So I like that 36 spot to just give some recognition to a team that's playing great basketball right now. Kentucky, I moved up. We're in the range, 8 to 11. The 8 and AP 11. Still waiting for the meat of their schedule in the non-conference to come, which will be happening here shortly. Tennessee, Memphis, big game this week. In our prediction segment on our podcast, you'll hear about that. Trying to look at some other differences here. Arizona, we've got them, I got them 12, we got them 15. Oregon, 10. That's pretty high for them. I got them at 13. Michigan State, down at 16 in the AP poll. I got them at 14 after they beat Rutgers. So we're in the same ballpark, if you will. Villanova at 20. I got them at 22. Xavier, 23. I got Xavier 20. So we're all in the same ballpark, if you will. Seton Hall, 22. I dropped them at 31, as I said, after their loss. Michigan, I dropped from 1 down to 5. They dropped, I think they were at 4 down to 5 after they lost to Louisville. So, a lot of similarities. Maybe the biggest change, for me is moving Ohio State up to 2 and some other teams that obviously I'm giving some recognition to. I kept Washington in at 24. Washington was kicked out basically the AP poll. I know they lost at home to Gonzaga, but they're pretty good. Just watch them if you did on Sunday night. So a lot of changes, in that regard. All right. So this week on NCAA.com and March Madness, you've got the Power 36 as you see there. Player of the week, Mac McClung from Georgetown. Scored 33, if I'm not mistaken, against Oklahoma State. They were previously unbeaten. They ended up losing 2 games last week. That's why they bounced out. They ended up losing to Wichita State, a team that I have now included in my Power 36. He scored 19 in their road win at SMU. So Georgetown, all sorts of chaos early in the week. Multiple players gone, including James Akinjo, the backcourt mate of Mac McClung. And yet, here comes Mac McClung taking reins of the backcourt, leading Georgetown to 2 road wins, and ultimately, you could argue, saving their non-conference season to get those kind of road wins. So, team of the week was Ohio State, obvious reasons, knocking off North Carolina on the road in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and then their impressive home win over Penn State. Tuesday, we'll have coverage of the Jimmy V Classic between Indiana and UConn. That's the nightcap, Texas Tech and Louisville. So it's a huge game for Texas Tech. Last week, they lost to DePaul in overtime. If they could knock off Louisville on a neutral, that'll completely reset their season. They've not had Jamias Ramsey of late. That really hurts them. And right now, you could argue that Baylor, which knocked off Arizona, is right there with Kansas as the 2 best teams in the Big 12. And then on the weekend, we're going to talk about these predictions on March Madness 365. We've got some great games. You got Memphis, Tennessee. Gonzaga is going to Arizona. You've got Oregon at Michigan. It's one of the better non-conference weekends that we've had, and definitely games, and also some conference games still to come in the Big Ten as they play the second game of their 2 games in December. So a lot on tap here for sure in this week. And then some teams are in finals more next week, some team this week. And then the following Saturday, there's some big-time games really headlined by the Kansas-Villanova game, part of that Big East Big 12 challenge as well. So that's a look at the AP poll and the Power 36. For whatever reason, the questions aren't loading today. We'll try to figure out why that is happening. But anyway, I want to give you an update of where we stood on the Power 36 and the AP poll at this juncture. So Louisville, number 1 overall, beat the test against Texas Tech on Tuesday night at the Jimmy V Classic in Madison Square Garden. We'll see how they handle that. All right. For NCAA.com and March Madness, I'm Andy Katz. Thanks for watching our explanation of our Power 36 and reacting to the AP poll on this Monday, December 9th.